You know the drill. All these people love to say they have all these underrated gems on YouTube, only to go on to suggest stuff like Terraria or Monster Train. But that's not my style. My goal is to spotlight literally underrated games. And by that, I mean games that have less than 500 reviews on Steam. That's because once a game crosses that threshold, you are probably a lot more likely to have heard of it. But that's not the only criteria into making it into this video. These games also have to have at least an 85% positive rating on Steam, and many are way higher than that. That just ensures that I'm bringing some attention to some games that not just I like, but a lot of other people do too. Keep in mind though, if one doesn't grab your attention, stick around because I have a pretty good variety of games here. So get your wishlist ready, I have a lot of really neat stuff here. First up, I'm talking about Zero Protocol, a first-person sci-fi survival horror game that drops you into a desolate Antarctic research complex, with your mission to uncover the facility's dark secrets and try to survive this lonely hellhole. But this isn't just another indie horror game. It folds in a bunch of immersive sim elements that'll make System Shock fans feel right at home. The gameplay centers around you investigating the environment, finding passwords, and access cards to progress. To help with that, there's an in-game camera that snaps pics of items and locations, so you don't really have to scroll down too many notes. As you explore, you also go up against these zombie-like enemies, but your gun isn't a crutch to lean on, because enemies can be pretty vicious and they take quite a few shots to take down. That forces you to strategically use those few shots you do have and the environment to evade, take them down, or block them away. There's even a sanity mechanic where letting your mind fray can actually show you things that may or may not be actually there, blurring the line between reality by adding an unpredictable layer of psychological horror. This isn't trying to be some big AAA game, it's a tight, focused horror game that respects your time with a short and sweet 4 to 6 hour playtime. That said, it's not perfect though. The puzzles can feel a bit repetitive with all of the key and code hunting, but honestly, for a solo dev project, it's really impressive. If you're in the mood for a quick survival horror that won't lead you by the hand, Zero Protocol is worth taking a look at. And then we got Retro Machina, an isometric adventure that's basically if you kind of took something like Death's Door and mixed in some 1950s pulp sci-fi. You play as this tiny robot that looks a lot like Clank from Ratchet & Clank, but if he got lost in a dystopian Art Deco world. Humanity has vanished, leaving only their mechanical servants to slowly fall apart. It's primarily a puzzle-solving game, and that's where it really got its hooks in me. The core mechanic is hacking other robots and taking control of them, and by doing so, you use them to solve puzzles. So you're constantly figuring out how to use different robots and their abilities. Some are strong fighters, and some just need to stand on pressure plates and buttons to open up paths around the environment. But that's just the gameplay. The art style here is also just super solid. The world feels alive with all of its decaying technology, even though it's devoid of flesh and blood, if that makes any sense. It clocks in at about 10 hours long, and while everything is great at first, combat can honestly feel a little bit repetitive at times, but that shouldn't deter you from checking it out. If you're a fan of solving puzzles in an atmospheric world with some great art direction, this is worth a look. So for a top-down Zelda-esque adventure with a robot hacking twist, Retro Machina deserves to be part of your library. Hey, just a short little interruption here before we get back to the games. I have a quick announcement. This channel can now be supported on Patreon. I'll be going into more details after the games, but if you want to support what I do here, it'd be hugely appreciated. Plus, if you join at any paid tier before July 31st, I'll be sending you a random Steam key over on Patreon. Alright, but now back to the games.
It's Chief of Security, Stalin.
Moving on to Dead Hand, a bite-sized point-and-click adventure game with the classic LucasArts vibe. It takes the comedy that you would expect out of the Ron Gilbert era, but injects it with the paranoid tension of a Cold War Soviet bunker on the brink of a nuclear annihilation. So think Monkey Island meets Dr. Strangelove. That's Dead Hand in a nutshell. So you're going to be in and around a Soviet bunker with a nuclear apocalypse looming, and it's on you to stop it. And to do that, what you're going to do is explore, find unconventional tools, solve puzzles, and do all the old school point-and-click stuff that you'd expect. It's not much of a pixel hunt either. You shouldn't have too much trouble piecing together the cartoon logic of this world teetering on the edge. The atmosphere here is pure Cold War aesthetic, with a strangely charming vibe of a Soviet-era facility. Humor in games can be pretty hard to pull off, but Dead Hand remains sharp and tongue-in-cheek while doing a great Dr. Strangelove homage. Due to its subject matter, it does fall into the dark comedy category and never goes too dark. Then again, its themes of nuclear tensions are unfortunately pretty prescient, but the base game clocks in about an hour, and while you might be disappointed by that, I'd just say it's being really efficient. Plus, if you aren't satisfied with the 1 hour runtime, there's also an included expansion called Red Star, which adds a significant chunk of new content, basically a whole new game on top. So in the end, you are getting a serious bang for your buck here. It's one of those games that could have only come out of a real passion and respect for the classics of this often slept on genre. It's cheap as hell and was a blast to play through with my wife on the couch. So if you're a fan of Day of the Tentacle or Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, or even just have a passing interest in the Soviet Union, you need Dead Hand in your life. Next is a simple game that is pure zen, a side-scrolling infinite runner called Non-Stop Raiders. If you need to zone out and let your reflexes take over, this could be a great one for you. So think Cannonball or Jetpack Joyride, but with surprisingly rhythmic combat. It's not groundbreaking by any means, but it does a solid job of what you'd want out of one of these kinds of games. It does the continuous flow of running and jumping that's expected, with some timed combat tossed on top. That being what often feels very rhythmic, where your movements and attacks get you into an excellent flow state, and it just feels damn good. It's got a clean pixel art style and a focused design for you to really truly zone out with. As you defeat enemies, you earn money to unlock new characters or upgrade abilities. This progression is pretty satisfying, but it also never really feels too punishing if you don't have these upgrades yet. This isn't a deep RPG, it's an infinite runner that's just here to kill some time with. For a budget-friendly way to decompress with your brain completely on autopilot, Non-Stop Raiders is an easy add to your Steam library, especially if you use a Steam Deck. Hands of Necromancy is a dark fantasy game that blends classic shooter action with Metroid Prime style exploration. If you're a fan of fast-paced boomer shooters and ability-gated Metroidvanias, this game delivers the intense combat similar to like Hexen within big environments you'll explore. You'll wield magic weapons, tear through enemies, and constantly be on the lookout for new powers. Your unique necromancy abilities give you some fun options for gameplay as well. You can transform into enemies like snakes and hulking rock monsters, but the titular hand of necromancy gives you the power to resurrect fallen enemies to fight alongside you, turning them into your own minions. The visual style is the classic 2D sprites and 3D environments as you want, because this was built in the GZ Doom engine, which makes this feel like a game that was out of a time capsule, just with plenty of modern design considerations. While it's not a modern AAA production, Hands of Necromancy is an impressive FPS Metroidvania that'll make you want to have a zombie army by your side. There's even a sequel that came out pretty recently that I still haven't gotten around to, but if you want more from where this came from, there's more waiting for you. Moving on to Ultimate Godspeed, a chaotic multiplayer game that could be a hit on your next game night with some friends. Now, it's not the most polished or fleshed out, but for a simple party racing game that's a blend of Mario Kart with Ultimate Chicken Horse, it's a good time. It takes the structure of a simple kart racer, but the focus quickly becomes about screwing your friends over in the most busted ways imaginable. You're going to be power sliding around turns and boosting to the finish line, but in between each run, everyone gets a random assortment of tools and stage pieces where the players are actively encouraged to create level-breaking shortcuts. The game wants you to break it by subverting the pathing of the track, but if you get overzealous, your buddies might choose to destroy a vital part of your plan, or maybe simply just add an oil slick or some ice to make things a little bit harder for you. It's a mechanic that completely transforms each race into a dynamic puzzle. You're always trying to find the fastest route while simultaneously trying to screw over everyone else. It creates unadulterated strategic chaos that is really fun in the format of a behind-the-back racing game. The visual style is bright and clear, but it's not about trying to be a graphical powerhouse. It's about making the action pop and keeping the focus on the unhinged enjoyment of sabotaging your friends. The joys of pulling off a perfect power slide through a shortcut you just built, or watching your buddy careen into a trap you placed is great. All that said, the game is really light on content, like only a few levels and characters, but I don't think that that's a huge deal here because the variation is spawned from the chaos made by building on what is already there. This isn't one I'd recommend picking up to play solo though, because it's a multiplayer only game with no bots. But if you want one of those loud screaming, laughing sessions with some friends on the couch or online, it's a fun time despite the little content and jank. It's a messy game that's fun because of the tools that it hands you to be a jerk to your friends. So if you're looking for a multiplayer game that's strategic, and you have a crew that's ready to deal with a mess of building and racing, Ultimate Godspeed is worth a look. Next is yet another frantic multiplayer-focused game, this one called Gunsport. It's one of the games that was stuck as a Google Stadia exclusive, but was later released as an enhanced version on Steam, but it never got the love that I think it deserves. It's set in a cyberpunk future where world conflicts are settled with matches of Gunsport, that being a sport that blends volleyball with guns, and it really is as simple as that. Think the back and forth volleys of a game like Windjammers mixed with Midway's long-forgotten gem Dogpatch. It strips away any overly complex mechanics and boils down competitive multiplayer to its purest form. Your goal is to try to score on your opponent's side by shooting the ball into one of the colored goals, each with its own value. Keep in mind that there's a cooldown on your shots, which means you can't just spam bullets. You have to strategically time your fire to shoot the ball in or to deflect your opponent's shots on goal. It's one of those simple games that allows players to pick it up in seconds, but to truly master, there's plenty of strategy to concoct. One thing that I want to highlight here though is my personal favorite game mode, which is Jupiter Hardcore. While it might seem counterintuitive for a fast-paced multiplayer game, what it does is it slows the gameplay down by making the ball heavier, and by doing so, it balances and makes the playing field for all skill levels really even by forcing more deliberate shots, and that makes it more accessible and fun for everybody. So if you're looking for a local or online multiplayer game that's easy to get into but offers a surprising amount of depth, Gunsport is another game to add to your game night docket. Trifox is a 3D platformer that blends Crash Bandicoot-esque exploration with twin-stick mechanics. You play as a fox who can choose to take the form of a warrior, a mage, or an engineer, each with their own distinct abilities. But the fun lies in utilizing multiple powers. Deploying turrets, casting spells, and dodging make enemy encounters frantic because of how many tools you have in your bag of tricks. The aesthetic is this modern take on the low-poly platformer vibe. It's clean and sharp while not feeling really too dated at all. Initially, Trifox did feel a bit sluggish, but as I played it seemed to be more of a tease because that dramatically improves as you unlock new abilities. They fundamentally enhance your movement and attack capabilities, which make the gameplay far more fluid and dynamic. So if you're a fan of classic Crash-style platformers and you're ready for a game that has a ton of ways to approach combat, Trifox is worth a look. Next up, I'm climbing out of the depths of hell with Rising Hell, a vertical roguelike platformer that nails the feel of a good rising uppercut. Take Downwell's Descent and flip it upside down and toss in the intensity of a character action game like Devil May Cry. The uppercut here is the centerpiece of the combat. The tight controls of launching enemies into each other, exploding into tiny bits, feels super visceral and is never not satisfying. The pixelated gothic art and the metal soundtrack evoke a dark and detailed depiction of a heavy metal version of hell. Like most roguelites, Rising Hell is tough. You're gonna be dying a lot, but you collect in-game currency on runs, spending on perks and upgrades at shops. It's a persistent progression that makes subsequent attempts easier, but it also makes every run feel meaningful. So give Rising Hell a look if you want to uppercut your way through some demons. Somna Buster is a hand-drawn action platformer with a focus on high speed. Take the speed and flow of a 2D Sonic, but give it all a quirky wiggle vision aesthetic, and then you have Somna Buster. You play as Macy, a witch who's traversing a wacky, colorful world, but it's the movement where the game truly shines. She has this broom burst ability that acts kind of like a triple jump and a dive. It's a move central to the incredibly fluid character movement. Even if you're not trying to shatter speed records, simply moving through the levels feels damn good. Every action is designed to keep you in motion, chaining together abilities for a real sense of flow. The vibes here are also just great, due to its sketchy animated look that gives everything this charming off-kilter feel. Plus, the comic cutscenes are a great touch at adding personality and flair. Somna Buster plays super smoothly top to bottom. It's clear to see a lot of passion went into making the mechanics feel tight and responsive. So for fans of high-speed platformers, or if you simply appreciate hand-drawn aesthetics, Somna Buster is worth adding to your library. Next is Deckline, a war-themed card game that traps you in a war zone, out of ammo, and you're playing what might be your last game of the Eastern European favorite, Duroc, while bombs fall outside. It's one of these games from this emerging genre of high-tension table games, similar to games like Inscription or Buckshot Roulette. The genius lies in the contrast, a straightforward game set against a grim backdrop. The incredible audio design adds so much to the feel of the game. The sound of distant bombs is a constant reminder of the dire situation you're in. And the concept itself is actually inspired by real events, which elevate the simple card game into a desperate attempt to distract from your inevitable death. All that said, it's time for a quick aside. With this new wave of games in this mold, they owe a lot to a game that I never see brought up in the conversations around these kind of games. That being Resident Evil 7 of all things, but more specifically the 21 game mode from the Banned Footage Volume 2 DLC. It puts you into a Saw-like game of blackjack set up by the baker's son, Lucas, and you're forced to play against another victim, and with each loss resulting in escalating torture, which ultimately leads to one of you being killed. And I think that it's a shame that being a progenitor to this type of game, it doesn't really seem to get the recognition that it deserves. But now back to Deckline. It's a masterclass in amplifying tension in a similar way to RE7's 21 DLC, just less Saw-like and more dire and grounded. It's an extremely slight game, with each run only taking a few minutes, but for the low price that's being asked for, I think it's worth it. So if you're a fan of these Buckshot clones with tension-filled takes on simple games, Deckline is definitely worth picking up. Archaeogem is a precision platformer where you'll be threading needles with your jumps while also using your whip in classic adventurer fashion. So yeah, it's Indiana Jones by way of Celeste, and it does what you want out of a game like that. Tight controls and lots of failures with instant retries that get you into the one more try type of loop. Since you play as a whip-cracking, dashing explorer, your goal is to collect shiny gems scattered through all these tricky levels. Every movement feels incredibly responsive. So if you screw up, you know it's your fault, not some janky controls. That's the bread and butter of a solid precision platformer, and Archaeogem nails it. Visually, it goes for the modern pixel art look that we all know very well, but it does it in a way that makes every new screen very clear to parse. Archaeogem might not hit Celeste's legendary status for every player, but honestly, for what it is, it's a tight, focused precision platformer, and that's still great. It delivers its challenge, lets you struggle a bit, and then lets you walk away feeling accomplished. So for a challenging platformer, make sure you give Archaeogem a shot. Alright, and then for the final game, consider it to be more of a bonus game because I feel like it's only a matter of time before this game blows past the 500 review mark on Steam, but I've been loving Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo. It came out recently at a time that it kind of got trampled over with other games because it came out around the launch of the Switch 2 and Summer Game Fest, so it really didn't have too much coverage when it came out. But it's a GBA-inspired top-down crime adventure in the style of Zelda, where you play as Pipit, a bat from the influential Pipistrello family, who has monopolized the city's electricity. And while you're visiting your aunt, the family's head honcho, rival criminals try to trap her soul in some batteries, but Pipit inadvertently interrupts, trapping a fragment of her soul in his yo-yo, which sets them off as a team to reclaim her essence from 4 crime bosses to restore her family's power. Gameplay-wise, you'll explore an urban overworld, think Hyrule, but with stuff along the lines of like a mall dungeon. But the game really comes together with its core mechanics, where your yo-yo isn't just a combat tool, it's also crucial for movement and puzzle solving, which feels incredibly snappy and satisfying to use. Plus there's also a cool upgrade system where you take on debt at your home base for upgrades. These upgrades, like increased damage, come with short-term drawbacks, such as reduced health, which go away as you pay off your debt by collecting money. Visually, Pipistrello goes for the GBA-inspired pixel art look, but I'd be shocked if you can find me a GBA game that looks this great. The soundtrack is also amazing, with the composer Yoko Shimomura of Kingdom Hearts and Street Fighter II fame contributing some amazing tracks. All that said, if you're a sucker for a classic top-down adventure game, Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo needs to be in your library. Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo should be the next game you play. Alright, and that wraps up my latest video on underrated games on Steam. I'm always on the hunt for new games, so if you have any that you think I should check out, make sure you leave those in the comments below. And speaking of going the extra mile to help me out, yeah, like I said earlier, I have a new Patreon. There you'll find tiers that will get you exclusive access to extra stuff, like the new video I just uploaded that goes over how I find a lot of the games that I cover. And not to paywall too much, I'll just say Augmented Steam is a lifesaver. But depending on your tier, you could also get a credit at the end of my videos, or even a shout out. Plus, if you sign up for any paid tier before July 31st, I'll be sending over a random Steam key through Patreon to you. But with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching.